is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is up on Center Stage, the show about the arts and the artists behind their work. Twice, I have had the privilege of interviewing the talented pianist Reed Tetzloff on my show. I have featured his talents in my concert series of Soirees by Moonlight. I have watched as he addresses the piano with a humility that is born out of a lifetime of service to this instrument. I have watched his rise in a career that can often be unkind, but yet his passion defines his path, which is clear and sure-footed. I have seen several sides of Reed Tetzloff. I have seen him secretly wrestle with some of life's decisions. And as an extraordinary artist, some of those decisions lure him inwards, sometimes forming a necessity to hide from us and protect his immense creative fountain of strength. For the world's greatest artists must often withdraw momentarily out of the fast lane to focus on their inner voice. In that way, through the pandemic, Reed Tetzloff was on a quest. And he circumnavigated his path with two composers whose quests are legendary, Charles Ives and Beethoven. He has joined with composers who were looking for the unimaginable in their music. And within the pairing, he has released a new recording of the Concord Sonata of Charles Ives and one of Beethoven's late sonatas, Opus 110. After two earlier recordings, Transcendence, featuring the music of Griffiths, Scriabin, and Franck, and his Schumann CD, his new recording of Ives and Beethoven finds Reed at a firmly mounted threshold before a new journey. His personal story that seems to continually evolve, never ending, much like the music itself. I feel that Reed is on the road of Parsifal with a quest that will never end. But rather, he will leave us with the right questions to keep asking of our souls when bathed in his sensitive and powerful music making. I hope you enjoy our relaxed fireside chat at my home. So, I have the honor of welcoming Reed Tetzloff back to Center Stage. And Reed, congratulations on your new recording, and I am thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much, Pam. It's always a great pleasure to be here and to speak with you.
Well, a lot has happened since we saw each other last. A lot. A lot in the world, a lot in the world of music. I mean, COVID, the pandemic that seemed to flatten musical stages with one blow. It was so unkind. I just need to know, how did you handle it? How did you handle the beginnings of the pandemic?
The beginning of the pandemic was obviously an unprecedented time, and my own story about that time is kind of a strange one in a way, because on March 14th, 2020, a Saturday, I had a concert to play up in Rhode Island. And throughout that week, things had started to shut down. And I was wondering, of course, if this concert would go on or not. And the presenter told me, no, we're going to have the concert. There are no cases up here. It's going to be fine. So anyway, my family lives up in Massachusetts, about an hour and a half or so away from the location of this concert. And I had planned to go and play the concert on Saturday, drive up to see my family after the concert, spend the Sunday with them, and then come back to New York, where I live, on Monday morning. And about 2 days before that concert, as things were starting to really get to the next level, I had the thought, maybe I should pack some clothes and, be ready to stay for 2 weeks at my family's house until this is all over in 2 weeks. And of course, I stayed there in Massachusetts for about 6 months, and then in September I was back in New York and trying to piece things together from there. But everything got canceled, obviously, and it was a time of just going to the piano, this upright that my family had, and it was actually the piano that I discovered music on when I was about 3 years old. And who knew that would be the piano that 25 years later I would be practicing on during this global pandemic. But I would go to that piano and just sort of play through repertoire that I liked, something to keep my fingers and my mind sort of in shape and giving myself goals to work for, even though there were no concerts. So I was actually, able to focus fairly well during that time, thankfully. But yeah, it was unprecedented for sure, and we had no idea what was going to happen next.
Totally. But you had hope.
I think so. I think the hope came through just the music itself. I guess I'm good at, looking at a score in front of me and just seeing that, and not seeing, sort of a bigger picture of how everything's falling apart around.
Yeah.
So that's a skill that I think I'm lucky to be able to go into that frame of mind.
Well, first of all, I have to say how adorable that you actually returned to play the original piano that you had discovered when you were a child.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it was just sitting in my family's house. I don't come from a musical family, but my mother had inherited it from her parents. Nobody else wanted it out of my mother's siblings, so we had it. And I discovered it as a kid and played by ear and things. And then it just stayed in the house, even after we had different pianos. Of course, we had grand pianos, but...
Oh,
yeah.
That's grand.
Yeah.
So, each piano comes with its particular challenges. And even for the great Reed Tetzloff, going back to playing an upright, that took considerable, grit.
It was better than nothing. I mean, you can... I always remember this story of Franz Liszt going to play a concert, and I don't remember where it was exactly, somewhere in Europe, and apparently he was presented with an upright, and the pedal was not working, that he could press the pedal down and the dampers would go up, but they wouldn't go down, so that it was as if the pedal was just held. And he played a concert on this piano with somebody assisting him, having his hand inside the piano and pushing down the dampers when Liszt would nod or something like that. I just think if this is good enough for Franz Liszt, I'm not going to complain about pianos ever again.
Oh, I love that.
So,
I love it, especially for Franz Liszt. It's
yeah,
amazing.
of all people, right. Yeah.
But was that a time, those 6 months, with your family, for all of us, we were forced to go inside of ourselves, Was that a time of introspection that perhaps you needed? Even with your trusty upright?
Sure, certainly. Yeah, and I think, some of the composers that I was drawn to during that time, like you mentioned, with Beethoven, with Schumann, that music is very inward, and, that's what I was attracted to for whatever reason. The sense of, you kept saying the word quest, which is just perfect for Beethoven and Ives. They were idealists, and they were not really the type of composer where they sat down and just churn out a string quartet or a symphony like Mozart would have done or Schubert would have done. You see their sketches, Beethoven, and you see the passages that he crossed out, and you think, this guy's hopeless. Why would he write that? But then the result that he gets after that, after that blood and sweat and tears, is so exciting, because you feel the sense of searching in his music.
Yeah.
Same with Ives, of course. Ives even envisioned the first movement of the Concord Sonata, the Emerson movement, as sort of an uncompletable piece where the whole idea of endlessness is baked into the music. He said that what he loved about this music was that he would never finish it, and he just loved to sit down at the piano and see how he would play it today and how he would play it tomorrow and how it would change. And that's a feature of the Concord Sonata that's so important to capture when performing it, just that it can never be the same twice.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So getting back to my introduction of you, let's talk about that endlessness and also the quest, because I have a feeling in my heart of hearts, and I know you fairly well now, that there is a bit of Parsifal in you. I always feel that you are a young man, now a mature man, and who is really on your own personal quest as well as your musical quest. Am I on the right road?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting, and I love Wagner, so thank you for that. That's an honor. Yeah, well, I will say that I had the education that I had really, I think, put me on this path in a way. I had this education at Mannes College, not just with my teacher, my piano professor, but with all of these classes I was taking, where we learned. I had a professor who I'm still close with who would say, there are three stages to, your education. The first stage is that you realize that you know nothing. The second stage is when you learn what the questions are, the questions that you don't know the answers to, as in nothing. What are the questions? And then the third stage is you compile a reading list, and then you spend the rest of your life reading and getting a little closer, perhaps. And that just kind of stuck with me because it created this sense that I have of this constant sort of progressive feeling as a musician, where one thing that I do is only, what I'm doing right now is only groundwork for what I'm going to do later. Even one concert, a preparation for the next concert. And there's never a time when you get there and then you're done. And if there is, then you're not creative anymore.
That's incredible.
So,
I love it.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at Beethoven, as he developed as a composer, there are times in his life when he writes a piece, like he gets to his middle period and he writes, say, the Third Symphony, the Eroica, and he just nails it, and it's just the most unbelievable piece, and it's like everything is in focus, and he's got it, but he's not satisfied, and he keeps going, and he tries to express in another way, and then he writes the Fifth, which is maybe an even more revolutionary piece, and there was something that Richard Good said to me, or said in a masterclass that I was in, which was he pointed out how he was talking about Mozart, and we're always trying to learn and to figure out what Mozart really wanted and how he would have really played, right? How would you ornament this? Would he play the hands together, slightly off, or how would he improvise a cadenza, or what? All of these kind of stylistic questions about Mozart. And Richard Good said, if one day we discovered by some miracle a recording of Mozart playing all of his music, what would we do? Would we just sit down and spend the rest of our lives trying to imitate it? Of course not. We would still be looking for our own answers. So it's never, the journey is the point here, I think, for all of this.
Fabulous. So coming back to the idea of Parsifal then, and you're talking about the questions, this teacher who guided you in those 3 steps, it's so important that we ask the right question.
Yeah.
And that really is kind of in correlation to Ives and his unanswered question. Right. And the fact that, I understand that the Concord Sonata is really based on the Transcendentalists.
Yeah.
And I love that because they were the true individuals at the start of this country.
Yeah.
And here he is centering on Concord, Massachusetts, where so many important things happened, first of all.
Yeah.
But the fact that he deals with all the Transcendentalists and they have their own motive and their own sense of lyricism within what he offers, I think is extraordinary. Coming back to you, what has your question been? Have you figured that out yet? I mean, Parsifal really he's charged with this fantastic quest, and he starts out really naive, and he's not of that sophisticated order yet, but becomes that in the end by his journey. Yeah. And he finds the question. He
finds the question. That's so important, and I don't know. If I've distilled anything down into one question, but what I was thinking about, especially recently, is something that one of my favorite musicians ever, Robert Levin, said, which is that what Robert Levin said is that any artist, whether that's a musician or a painter or a poet or a writer or anything, has this essential sort of desire or mission to be a chronicler of the experiences that humans share, and they're uniquely sensitive to, the human condition, and whether they express that through painting or through music or through a poem or a sonnet or anything. And I think, it's something so beyond, treating music as a trade that you practice, for hours and hours and get it really good. We have a bigger job than that, and I love to find places in a piece of music that, when you look deep in a score, for example, you might find extraordinary, symbols where a composer is hinting at something that you wouldn't notice unless, you're kind of thinking in that way. Of course, you can find them in Bach and, in the Passions and Mozart operas and everything, but you can find them in Puccini. I'll give you one that I love. I was talking with the same professor who had the 3 stages of learning, Fred Feyleisen, a really brilliant violinist and scholar with whom I studied and still friends. And he was telling me about this incredible thing that happens in La Bohème in the 4th act, and midway through the act, Mimi is dying. And Schaunard goes to sell his coat because that's the only thing that they have that's worth any money.
And the big aria he has is beautiful.
He sells his coat, and so they're left alone, Mimi and Rodolfo, and she says to him something like, I don't remember the exact text, but she says something like, listen, I'm going to tell you something simple, but it's as deep as the ocean. You're my whole world. And the music it's in C minor, and she's singing this melody. All right. Now, it's just a descending scale, actually. That only happens one other time in the opera, and where does that happen the second time? The very end.
At the very end, and he's telling Mimi. Yeah.
Exactly. And at the end, that's the only other time it happens, and it's in C sharp minor, which is on the other end of the circle of fifths. It's turned upside down.
Okay.
Telling us that world that they had, it's shattered. She's died. And,
Mimi!
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't really notice that, but it's very beautiful. Yeah. And
so is he turning our world upside down there, or is he trying to make it jubilant that it actually rings with death, and this is the moment we've been all going towards in this opera?
We've been going towards. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I didn't think of that angle. That's interesting. But there's definitely something to hearing this and then hearing that.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And then, there's this, and then, another thing that's always been important to me as a musician is hearing in a linear way. People hear things vertically, but if you hear linearly, you're going to get this. The descent of that scale, and how each note, how brilliant it is that each note is approached differently. All right, I did this one, and this leap, but going there. So
I love that section of Bohème.
I know, yeah.
There's not a dry eye in the house.
No,
Puccini knew how to do this very well. Thank you for pointing this out.
Absolutely. And I get kind of frustrated when people ask, about things like that. They ask, well, was the composer aware of what he was doing? And I think that's a question that people always ask when they have an agenda. If they've thought of it, the answer is yes, the composer was aware. And if they wouldn't have thought of it, the answer is no, I don't think so. It's a coincidence. But, we have to define, what do we mean by aware? What part of his brain was he aware of this?
Wow.
And, how does that all, based on the knowledge and the, the genius that a composer has, how does that come together to communicate to us? But that, that's what I love to find in this art.
I love that.
So,
in the same way, doesn't Beethoven do that? Doesn't he,
of course.
In the 110, doesn't he flip certain patterns?
Well, in the last movement, and this whole piece is very symbolic, especially the last movement. You have the form of the last movement, a recitativo, then an aria, arioso, a fugue, and which fails to sort of culminate, and it collapses back into another aria, which is more exhausted and more, sighing and dying, really. And then at the end of that second arioso, the music is, dead, or, one thread left, really. and then he revives it and ends with a second fugue. But that's really almost doing it a disservice to put it that way, because the second fugue is the means of revival. It's not that we arrive at a second fugue and then you're in tempo and you're happy and now it's optimistic, but that is how the rigor and the structure of the fugue is sort of like the guide for this rebirth, as you go up from the underworld up into the heavens. And yeah, and the first fugue is in A flat major, like this. And then when you reach the second, you're in G major and it's turned upside down. It goes the other way. And G major being on the other side of the circle of fifths again. So then there's this very gradual build-up with the una corda pedal down the whole time. So it's not actually a build-up of dynamics until the very end. It's probably, as Arthur Schnabel thought, a build-up of tempo. And nobody plays it that way. Everybody plays it, in this kind of literal way that now we're at a fugue. And it ignores the symbolic nature of this fugue. But anyway, what the incredible thing is that as you work and struggle through this transformation, as you play this upside down fugue, and he does it upside down, he does it through diminution, augmentation, all the tricks are there. And then when he finally arrives at A flat major, the key that you're supposed to be in, here, then what happens? No more fugue, because the fugue is like obsolete. You don't need it anymore. He's reached such a point where it can only be homophonic, and then you have this incredible, glorious conclusion where the fugue got you there.
Wow.
And and the modulation, of course, from this side to that side of the circle back to where you're supposed to be. It's one of the most incredible sort of transfigurations in music that I know of.
Wow.
So,
is that one of the things that led you to this sonata to record it?
Yeah, that's probably the most, the whole sonata is a masterpiece, and there's like late Beethoven is just the most personal and human and, warm and strange and peculiar. But so just to be in that world is such a joy. But yeah, definitely this sort of cosmic drama of the last movement is probably the most incredible thing about this incredible piece.
Cosmic drama.
Yeah, it really is.
I love that.
It really is.
Because I know in the first movement he talks about being amiable. It's something we don't really distinguish about him, But yet he'd come to this point.
Yeah, it's this sort of peaceful, kind of loving, reaching out idea. The piece starts with just the most tender music. And it's so different than some of the other late sonatas that, have more, begin like that. But yeah, this 110, it spans everything from this tenderness to, like I said, this cosmic drama in the end.
And do you feel that it's endless, that perhaps, like what we've been talking about from the very beginning, he hasn't found the question yet to answer?
Yeah.
He's leaving it to us?
Perhaps, yeah. And no, that's just one of the most beautiful things about playing this music. And actually, when I conceived this program, by the way, with the Concord and the Beethoven, I put the Concord first on the CD, and ended with the Beethoven. And the overall form, in my mind anyway, the Concord starts very grand and very, very commanding and sort of heaven-storming. And you've got that beginning, which is up here, and then the piece evolves over 50 minutes into the last movement, the Thoreau movement, which is a depiction of this solitude at Walden Pond, and Thoreau at the end playing his flute in solitude and communion with nature. So it goes to this incredibly peaceful, quiet point, and then out of that, one could start this very loving, tender Beethoven, and then then you go back to back to the curtain that you were pounding on in the beginning of the Concorde, but now it's open. So that's my idea of these two pieces following each other.
How extraordinary. So let's talk about this project,
Yeah.
because this has been the most incredible time for you, really. After you played that upright at your parents', you got your act together. And to hear these pieces came together and a huge recording project. So tell us all about this. I want to know about the evolution, the decision to perform in Rockport, Massachusetts. It really aesthetically perhaps one of the most beautiful concert halls there is, with the ocean in back of you.
Yeah.
And somehow I think that you on your journey, it was just the perfect place. But please tell us how you brought your team together and what you really wanted from this.
Well, I've been very fortunate to have a really fantastic team of people that we work well together. We share artistic vision. We believe in each other and what we can accomplish. And I think it became clear, obviously, that concerts were not coming back soon. And I think the highest form of communicating through music is in the concert hall. But even having said that, it's not, nothing is perfect. The concert is not, is not the ideal either. I don't think there is an ideal. But
That's interesting.
it was important to record, because that was, of course, it's a very important part of an artist's life. All the great artists have recorded, but it was also what we could do at that time. And we first did the Schumann CD almost just to see what we could do together. And there was a lot of, there was a lot of long distance things. I had Paul Carrasco, the producer of the Schumann, and one of the producers of the Concorde, who was in Australia the whole time. So he would just zoom in. And we were able to accomplish some really cool things even with those limitations. But the idea of the Ives and Beethoven program was my own, and then we worked together to assemble this incredible team with Stephen Epstein producing, and Jan Swafford writing liner notes. One of my favorite musical writers. You read his.
He's incredible.
Biographies of Brahms and of Ives and Beethoven
and Mozart.
Mozart, yeah, absolutely. And I read a chapter on the Eroica, and the tears were coming to my eyes because of how he wrote about Beethoven's sketches and how Beethoven put together that piece. And it's just the way he writes is really unique. Anyway, and he agreed to do the liner notes, and we had Steve producing, and we had Emmy Ferguson, a really phenomenal flutist who joined me for the Concorde. And in the last movement, it's just a very short, maybe 2-minute flute part, but incredibly important, because that's the whole atmosphere of the ending comes through the flute.
Yes.
And it's an incredible moment in the piece, because he's spent 45 minutes exhausting all of the possibilities of the piano. And you're like, what could he do next? Well, there's not really anything he could have done next, so we had to put a flute up there because he transcended everything. But
exactly.
There's great meaning in that. And anyway, so it came together in Rockport, and with this incredible view of the ocean behind me.
All glass, looking out on the water.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you decided to do a film of this whole process.
Yeah.
Which I think is remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, we have to note that Stephen Epstein, your engineer and producer, is the holder of 18 Grammy Awards in classical music, and he's been nominated countless times. He's worked with Yo-Yo Ma, he's worked with the greats. Here you were able to nab him at a time that's so important for you in your career.
Yeah, it was an incredible honor, for sure. And just to be working with someone like that, and to go upstairs and listen to a take with him and just experience his musical chops and his understanding of Ives. It was, a lot of musicians are not that familiar with the type of music Ives wrote, and it's very strange music. And there are sort of no rules. There are no rules that Ives sticks to, and it's just he is a maverick and he does what he wants and he doesn't care what anybody thinks. And you kind of either vibe with it or don't. And Steve really does. And so that was exciting. I would sit up there and we would be looking at the Concorde, and he would say, this reminds me of a time at Tanglewood when I saw these 3 guys standing on a porch, and they were huddling over a score, it seemed. And I approached them, and I realized that it was Leonard Bernstein, Aaron Copland, and Michael Tilson Thomas, studying the score of the Ives Fourth Symphony. So these experiences that somebody like Steve had were
he's been there
very
all the
cool.
time,
Yeah.
and front and center.
Yeah.
So we should say that this is available on Master Performers label,
Yes,
which is also quite important.
Yes.
I mean, I feel, Reed, that you've really arrived through this project. I mean, and I also feel it's interesting. We keep using the word transcendentalist, and your first CD was called Transcendence.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I have to ask you the obvious question: are you of a transcendentalist mind?
Well, as I got to know, of course, as I got to know Emerson, and Thoreau and these guys, their thoughts is, their way of thinking is rather irresistible in many ways. So, and you have to read this kind of stuff, and you have to kind of get into the mindset to be able to really play it, because the Concord is a transcendentalist score. It's not just something that you practice and then you play. And I've always felt that when I perform it, it's so spontaneous that it has to sound like the pianist has been backstage and he's been reading Emerson, some lecture of Emerson, which get very intense, and and they're very formless and wandering and hard to follow, but the rhetorical heat is way up. And anyway, so the pianist has been backstage reading this, and they're transformed by it and thinking about it, and then they find themselves stumbling onto the stage, and they're like, where am I? And now I have to sit at the piano and communicate what I just read, and they go, oh my God! Right? And they start the Concord, and it just has to have that spontaneous heat.
Yeah.
That Emerson spoke with, and that how he thought, and Ives really became a sort of a fifth member of
didn't he?
of those people. Yeah.
It's interesting about Emerson because he had a lot to say, and he didn't hold back. And this whole spiritual basis, I love it. Without the religious dogma, it's really the firmament of every movement in America since then. Sure. If you think about it, I'm so intrigued by Ives, though. This is a composer I've not known a lot about. Yeah. And I was reading John Swafford's writing, and you're right. Swafford writes so lyrically. He's, I don't know, he's like a Johannes Brahms when he writes. There's a way he can turn a phrase. Oh, yeah. And I loved reading in his blogs that he knows he couldn't stick with the blog, but he has some things to say, but nobody will really want to hear it. I mean, he's so real. Yeah. But the whole thing about Ives that I did learn reading his writings, and of course your program notes, what the interest is in Ives's father. Yeah. The kind of life, the upbringing Ives had with this bandmaster and experimenting with sound and having two marching bands playing in different sides of a field, playing with dimensions of sound and in different keys. Yeah.
Oh, he's one of the heroes of American history, George Ives, for what he did with his son.
Seriously. But never, absolutely. When his son was pounding on the piano with his fists, he never said, don't do that. Exactly. Yeah. He just said, create. Yep. Yep. This is a world of wonder.
Yeah, and that's just such a a microcosm of what we need.
Absolutely. Talk about a quest. Yeah. So here this boy becomes this fantastic organist. He's grown up with every hymn and every band tune in the world. Yeah. And he has this strong sense of the South. I remember some of his songs. I love the General Wilkes Booth that goes into heaven. Right. I mean, so unbelievably operatic.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
But I always wonder, of course he was a genius. And of course he had the ability to stand out. He did everything Emerson told all of us to do. Yeah. Just stand out and be yourself. Yep. What was Ives on the spectrum, or was he just
I don't know. I think he was. Yeah, I think he was. No, I don't. Not that I know of. I think he's a genius, and he just did not care. He really was just belligerent and defiant, and he didn't want anything to do with the establishment. He didn't want anything to do with, the European musicians, although he knew that stuff better than he would have liked to admit, but especially Beethoven. But he won a Pulitzer finally when he started to get recognized later in his life. He won a Pulitzer for his Third Symphony, I think, and he sent it back and he said, "Prizes are for boys, and I'm all grown up." So it's very Ivesian. But
Wow.
he took a job as an insurance man, and he composed on the nights and the weekends. So he said, "I don't want my children to starve because of my dissonances, because the way he wrote would not, perhaps bring him success," and it didn't. He was ignored and for most of his life, and he just didn't care. And now, we know he's the greatest American composer.
Yeah.
Many would say. Certainly the father of modern American music.
But tell me about his relationship with Beethoven.
Yeah, he saw Beethoven, I think, as, for all of his independence, Ives' independence, I think he saw Beethoven as a spiritual guide. And, well, for example, famously the opening of the Fifth Symphony, Ives had reinterpreted that because it was always called fate knocking at the door, right? This. And I've said it's not only fate knocking at the door, it's a very transcendental idea. It's humanity knocking at the door of the divine mysteries, radiant in the faith that the door will be opened. He wrote this in a preface to the Concord Sonata. And
fabulous.
Yeah, and right at the beginning of the Concord Sonata, you have this huge opening statement, which I just played, and then it ends with that. And then throughout the piece, you have this Beethoven Fifth. In the Alcotts, the third movement, the most lyrical movement. It represents sort of an idyllic, pastoral kind of family scene in Concord, and so he used Beethoven as a symbol of his quest because he identified with Beethoven's. So, I think it's interesting that Ives is always, like say when the Concord has been recorded before, you find it in box sets of American masterpieces or modern masterpieces. But I don't know, I'd like to think that if Ives was here, he would be happy to be placed with Beethoven, because I think they do belong together.
That's really interesting, Reed.
That was
That's
part of my
really interesting.
thinking. Yeah.
I think this recording of yours is going to be very important in the annals of history. I do. Wow. So the film about the making of this, done beautifully, so professionally, in this gorgeous setting, is going to be premiered in New York City on September 20th.
Yes.
With yours truly, comparing. I'm very excited to be involved.
Can't wait.
And what are you looking for in that? What do you think this is going to bring to you, or do you care? Are we going to have an Ives moment?
Yeah, I think, I think getting to that Ives moment is certainly important. I want it to be a sort of a celebration of the things that we accomplished during this difficult time, and then a springboard to the future. We're also going to be screening a recital that I filmed at Mechanics Hall in Worcester, Massachusetts, back a few months ago this March, with a program, a very, very meaty program of Berg, Brahms, and Beethoven, a different Beethoven sonata. So you'll see that at the event in September. That was also with master performers, and a really fantastic production. Quite an experience with 12 camera angles and playing, just 4 takes straight through. You have to play well on all of them because they need to use all the cameras. So a bit of a different experience than recording a CD in a way. But, when you think of it as live performance, it's just very cool and
absolutely
beautiful, beautiful hall.
So you've got this whole new jive going now. I mean, you're a real recording artist and an important one, and you're making the most out of it, and visually as well. So here's what you've done in the pandemic, and you've made it paid off. Yeah, I love it.
I'd like to think that some good things came out of this time, but there's nothing. With that said, there's nothing like playing for people, and I got back to playing live concerts about a year ago, and I had not done it for a little over a year since that March 14th concert in Rhode Island, and then until about exactly a year ago, June of 21, and I sat down. I was playing this this program of all American music because it was for a festival that wanted to focus on American music, and I played the Concord there, and I also played this piece of Griffiths that was on the first CD, The Pleasure Dome of Kubla Khan, and I started with that, and that feeling when I started The Pleasure Dome of Kubla Khan and seeing the audience there, it was just like after a year, only a year, it was very strange. It was like, what am I doing here? About halfway through the piece, I remembered how to perform.
Is that right?
I don't think anything terrible happened, but it just felt very strange. And then it was okay, but there was like a relearning curve.
Yep.
At the beginning of getting, back in public.
I'm really glad you've spoken about that,
So,
because all of my colleagues have said the same thing.
Really, yeah.
And the amount of anxiety,
Yeah.
with not having performed, having to go back on stage is considerable.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though. You're just kind of winding up into it in the middle.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's
true.
so frank. I love it.
Yeah. But, that's what it
Okay,
is. Yeah.
so good things are happening to you along the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
And now,
Yeah.
where do we go from here as you get back on stage and
Yeah.
more recordings, I'm hoping?
Yep. Yeah, some of both. I'm heading actually to Paris in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be spending a lot of the rest of the summer there, and I'm playing in a couple of festivals in Switzerland and in Wissembourg, France, which is in the Alsace region near the German border.
Beautiful wine. Beautiful
Yeah,
wine.
yeah. So several concerts of chamber music and solo playing. Yeah, and then some debuts in some very, wonderful halls in Germany next year, in Berlin at the
fantastic.
Berlin Philharmonic, yeah, and Hamburg and Munich. And yeah, well, there was another thing that came along, which was another bad break. On top of COVID, we were going to, I was very close to, agreeing with the Russian National Orchestra to do the 5 Beethoven concerti. Okay. And then all hell broke loose over there in February, and so now I'm kind of looking for a replacement for that. But
I am so sorry.
Yeah, but no.
All 5?
All 5. Yeah. So that's it's a huge task, and that's going to be something that's just, to think about it is overwhelming, but it should be overwhelming, because if it's not, then you don't know what you're dealing with. So.
Oh my gosh, I
think
adore this idea.
Just do it. Yeah.
Because you bathed yourself in Beethoven. This seems right.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for another orchestra, perhaps?
Yeah.
To pick up on this?
It's a fluid thing, but it will happen in some way, for sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. How will you prepare yourself for that? I mean, when
gosh.
you're facing a recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm presuming you will have much time to do this, but
Yeah.
yet
Well, yeah.
Finances dictate that maybe
Yeah,
you
of
don't
course,
have
of
that
course.
much time.
No, recording, and I think we'll film, and we'll probably have concerts, coming after that, or around that somehow. So yeah, I mean, it will be a really, really exciting challenge. I've already played the 5, but not all of them with orchestra, but several of them. So I'm working through them now, and listening to a lot of Robert Levin, my favorite. Trying to improvise cadenzas, which is impossible. I think especially in the first 2 concerti, I'd like to maybe try my hand at that. Yeah, of course there are great cadenzas that Beethoven wrote as well, but that's an important element of playing these pieces.
Wow.
So.
Wow, this is so fascinating, Reed. So with all of this transcendence, we've all had our journeys, but yours has been particularly rich, and you've really been able to make the most out of this with the highest level people. Where are you now in yourself, within your own transcendence? I mean, if you can just dig deep for me for a minute.
Yeah.
Where are you really?
That's a question that I always have to think about, of course. I think as a musician, what I really value is sort of a slow burn, so to speak. I feel that with all of the things I've spoken about, a career where you have a quick rise and then you play a ton and then you go down, it doesn't really suit, because I want to be, I want my life to be a crescendo, and I want to be playing better when I'm 80 than I'm playing right now. And so it's easy to say, but how do you accomplish that? I think you have to really discipline yourself to never get comfortable. And it actually kind of, makes me sad in a way to see a lot of musicians that get very comfortable, that, I'm not calling people out here, but it's just that people may be very comfortable in how they do things, or they say, oh, well, this is the way this piece goes, and you're not doing that. I remember playing some of the late Brahms pieces, and I had read in one of these accounts of Brahms, playing, that Brahms would play, and I think a woman who studied with him or had turned pages for him or something wrote this about his own playing, that he would speed up into the middle of a crescendo and slow down to the end. And I started to, I thought, oh, that's interesting, and I started to play this intermezzo, with that idea. Here you would speed up, and you would slow down there, and then you get going again, and I felt it really worked, and I brought that to someone I was playing for at the time, and immediately I was stopped and told that there was too much rubato, and I just got kind of frustrated because it's like you think you know all the answers, but you don't know the questions even. That just went through my mind in my in my way of thinking, I guess, and. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
now how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that rubato in that beautiful Brahms piece?
Yeah, well, I think I would do some version of that. I think it's not it doesn't speak so much if it doesn't have flexibility, but beyond that point, I think I'm not going to play that piece the same in 10, 20, 50 years than I do today. If I did, that would not be very exciting. So with everything being so transient, I feel like for me the only way to really think is that I'm at this point right now. I do my best. It's never going to arrive somewhere. It's always going to be looking forward and changing, and then just be happy with that. I heard a talk by Mirella Freni, who recently passed away, and she was very close with my teacher. And someone had asked her, they were doing Q&A or something, and somebody asked her, how many times or something she was really satisfied with her performances, or what were her highlights where she felt she'd really sung her best. And what she said was something like, oh, it happened maybe 4 times in my whole career.
Exactly. That's very true.
That she came off the stage thinking, I nailed it. Otherwise, it was just... I do my best, and what happens, happens.
It is what it is on the day.
Yeah.
It's like Joan Sutherland used to say,
Yeah.
this is what I've got today. If you want something else, come back tomorrow. It'll be different. And it is the way we are as humans, and our own transcendence.
Yeah.
We are constantly evolving. I mean, you certainly are. And I think if you can stay on that Parsifal quest, you'll keep asking the questions for all of us. And because of that, your journey will be endless, but it will become stronger and stronger, and we'll be thrilled, and we'll want more answers, to these questions.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that's what music and art is all about.
Yeah.
It lets us find the beauty in the chaos. And I don't know if that's an original thought, but it sounds good to me.
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic.
So I think that we all need to watch for what happens from now, with you. Because certainly, I think that the stakes are becoming more interesting, and your sense of programming, is really, really inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. I've always felt that that's very important, and
Me too.
I enjoy constructing programs. As when I was younger, I always thought, why don't they teach us this in school? Why don't we have a course on programming? Why are we having a course on entrepreneurship where we have to learn how to make a budget? Like we don't know that or something. But
most don't read.
Maybe we don't. Yeah. But I mean, it's something you can figure out on your own, not taking a course at Manus. But But I think nothing wrong with entrepreneurship, but there was some, some stuff that, okay.
When I was in school, we didn't have those courses on the business of music, and I wished for them.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people don't understand programming. I think they lean on someone else. I think there are those who are really inspired as programmers to be unbelievably clever.
Yeah.
Nowadays, of course, we're going into a whole new realm where, the Messiah is semi-staged, and I think there's merit in that, and I think there's interest. And I think we need to remain open, but always fired up to connections. And I think what you've done here with the Ives and the Beethoven is exactly that. And it speaks to you. And because it speaks to you so in such a special fashion, we're going to be entranced.
Yeah, no, thanks. I always do think about connections. And there's this sweet spot, I think, between making a program that's unified, but also making a program that's varied. And that's not all the same. Everybody has their thoughts about programming. Some will say, you challenge your audience in the first half and you reward them in the second half. That's nice, certainly. And, perhaps it's good, first of all, I try to imagine that I'm the audience. And, an audience in Berlin is different than an audience in the States or an audience in,
Correct.
Korea and, so I would give the audience something that, if you're a 13-year-old kid who loves the piano like I was, and you just love listening to recordings and listening to music and going to concerts, you see this poster for the concert and you say, oh my God, this guy's playing the Liszt Sonata. Mom, I have to go. So there's a piece like that which draws, people to come and see you. But then once you've got them, then you can sneak in something that you want them to hear. So, when I go to Germany, I'm going to play Beethoven and Brahms, and they can handle that. They take very, very heavy programs very well, I think, in Germany. But I'm also going to put in the 3-page sonata of Ives, which is a 8-minute piece. It's called the 3-page sonata because he had these 3 huge pages, like poster board kind of things. So it's not actually, it's like 10 normal pages. But I think it will fit well with the rest of the program, and it gives sort of something that they probably don't know and that I want to proselytize a little bit for. So it's, all of those considerations come into programming, and there are certain things that you wouldn't do, like you wouldn't play, certain combinations of composers kind of clash to me. You wouldn't put Brahms and Liszt together generally, maybe, or a bunch of pieces in the same key. That gets kind of monotonous. In my opinion. But I think it's just about finding connections while keeping a sense of variety and making people want to come and hear you when they see the program.
I love that. I love that. Is there a particular key that resonates with you?
A particular key?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a great question. No, it depends on the piece, really. When Beethoven goes to G major at the end of Opus 110, that's very different than this piece in G major.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that all depends on context. I don't think I can give you a better answer than that now. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the color of some keys, D flat major is an extremely beautiful key. Comes to mind. Yeah.
And I have to ask, getting back to my intro, I spoke about every musician has to, at one point, to kind of cocoon themselves, to withdraw, to go to a place where they can save their energy, or perhaps find a new voice, or let the inner voice come to the surface. Is that important to you right now? Is that something you actively integrate into your life?
I think, the inner voice always coming to the surface is important, because we have to be really conscious of what we want to say. We have to be specific about what we want to say in a piece. If you play the Pathétique Sonata by Beethoven, you can say, well, this piece is pathétique. It's about, pathos and drama and everything. But what does that mean? Actually, I've been working on that piece now because I'll play it this summer. And I think Rousseau wrote that suffering is communicated pathos is communicated not through just a sheer experience of suffering, but actually through a sort of moral and righteous resistance to it. And that concept comes through that piece very,
Really?
in many ways. But I think you have to define exactly how that happens and then exactly how you're going to express it, so that what you know inside of you is somehow sent out. That's certainly about the inner voice coming out, and then translating that inner voice into something that your listener understands.
Absolutely.
So that's a big challenge.
You know, I've only just realized
Yeah.
that it was exactly 1 year ago
Yeah.
that you were in Rockport
Yeah.
at this
Like to the day.
fantastic hall
Yeah.
to the day,
Yeah.
recording the Ives and the Beethoven.
Yeah.
I want to ask what that recording process was like for you. I mean, how much Sturm und Drang were you experiencing? I mean, were you on a time schedule? Did you have 2 days to do both projects?
I had 3 days, and we didn't use the whole third day. We were done by noon on the third day, which was nice because then we had all of this filming to do, and there were these interviews going on with different members of the team, with Steve, with Emmy, the flutist, with John von Rohr, the piano technician. He was he's the technician for the Boston Symphony, and he came to work on this unbelievable piano that we had. And anyway, and then I had my interview piece on the last day, and I had put it off until the end because I was tired and I was thinking about recording. And then I finished recording, and Steve and I were, whew. And then, Paul Carrasco comes on the Zoom and he says, "Reed, you're going to need to play the Alcotts 8 times here for a film." So we did that, and we got it done.
Okay.
And then we, did some speaking part too. But
Wow.
But yeah, no, the recording part, it went actually pretty fast. I just did takes basically, and Steve told me, generally if I try to record in full takes because I want to have a live performance feeling. There are some things, I'll have to admit in the second movement of the Concorde that are really unplayable that you can't get in a live performance. You just can't. And Ives, wanted it that way probably. But in a recording, you'd like to get as much of these elements as possible, so you isolate a page here and there. But Steve would just tell me, why don't you do that page again? And then, that took a lot of pressure off of me because I didn't have to keep track of what I needed. In the other recordings, like the Schumann, I did that. But with Steve, it was all easy.
Oh, it's all taken care of.
It's all taken care of
in the hands of the greatest there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, what a relief for you to be able to focus.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, no, it was very focused. It was very intense, but it was joyful in a way. It was just, like I'm here, I'm doing something really fun, and I'm going to enjoy every second of that.
And are you feeling, I don't know how to put this.
Yeah.
I've always had the impression with you, there's this beautiful kind of raw energy that gets me back to the Parsifal thing, Parsifal is a younger man. And I always get the feeling that you are about to sometimes jump out of your skin. Mm-hmm. Is it easier for you now just to be really grounded when you come to a piece or when you come to like this recording project?
That's a good question. I mean, in a way, yeah, but I think within the music itself, there is always the impulse to jump out of my skin, and I have to almost restrain that because I want to just go for it. And like something, I might play for a friend of mine or somebody, and I realize that I'm maybe overdoing something, and that I have to reach more of an equilibrium, to get this piece to a point where I bring it on stage and, I communicate it. So I do have that instinct to just go for it. And I would never want to lose that. But it's something to kind of carefully hone, I guess. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
That really does answer it for me.
Okay.
You were so different from when we first had our very first interview. Mm-hmm. And even then, the genius came through, and it was very cerebral. And at other times, you constantly quoting poets and writers. And now you've become quite a good writer yourself.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, I've took a lot of pleasure in writing, essays and program notes on these pieces. I'm trying to compile some things into more of a unified work, which, maybe I'll publish a book in 20 years or who knows, maybe sooner. But I love to, ponder things about, music or art or even unrelated things and write them down. And, when Paul and Natasha and I and Richard Wen, all of these executive producers of this Ives and Beethoven recording, when they said, well, we're going to have Jan Swafford write the program notes and then we're going to have your essay. They're going to be right next to each other. I was like, I don't know about that. But, but I guess I approach it like anything else. I just try to write what's inside me. And I mean, I've always felt that I would be a writer or some kind of literary person if I was not a pianist.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
that does feel natural to me in a way.
That's interesting. Oh, that's all coming to the surface now, too,
Yeah.
my dear. That's you. As your writings for the program notes are fabulous.
Thanks.
And you're side by side with Mr. Swafford, and I think you deserve to be there. I think that was a good move. I want to say to you that I did a couple of months ago interview Steve Epstein on his own.
Yeah.
And he talked about you, that you were one of the brightest and most talented pianists he'd worked with in years.
That's extremely humbling and great to hear. Of course, I mean, no, just what a guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was speaking the truth.
Wow. Well,
especially in such a complex recording as you've just done. Now, Reed, every time we meet, I'm always trying to get to know the fun part of you.
okay.
And it always falls flat on its face. Because whenever I ask you what you do for fun, you always go back to the piano.
I'm like, I read Emerson. No.
Yes.
That's not fun.
Yes.
Emerson is like the least fun person to read. Yeah, because you just can't. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Let's try this.
So, okay, I've got a whole new plan.
Okay,
And this is
new
just
plan.
the lighter side of things. So
Okay.
we have to get to this point because
Yeah.
we have to find the side of you that's a little edgy and maybe,
Yeah.
we don't know, or maybe you don't reveal, or maybe you hide out just a little bit.
Okay, okay.
Okay, I got a few questions for you.
All right. I'm squirming.
These are the quickies.
Oh.
All right. Well, you've already answered this one. What would you do for a living if you had not become a musician?
Yeah, I'd be a writer. I'd be even more serious than I am now, and you wouldn't be able to get anything fun out of me. No, are these like rapid fire?
Yes.
Okay, like word association type of things.
Yes.
Okay, very Freudian.
Favorite hobby?
A baseball.
What?
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. No,
You actually
not going
risk that? I mean, to hurt your arm?
I
or-
play softball. It's very, very low key, but yeah.
Were you
I love it. Yeah.
Were you like a normal kid? I mean,
I was a
growing
pretty
up?
normal kid.
Were
yeah.
you out like out in
Lots
the
of
grounds?
sports.
and-
Oh yeah, and I hurt myself a lot. Broke my fingers, elbow problems. Yeah, so I stopped playing. I was really into basketball. Actually, that was my main thing, and I broke my fingers playing that. So I stopped doing that.
No.
But yeah, I still play softball in Central Park. I love it, and nothing like a baseball diamond on summer day. Yeah.
How real is that? I love it.
Well, Ives was like that too. Now I've tied it back into something that's very serious.
That's so cool. Well, I could see him doing that and eating the hot dogs and the whole thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Right.
And so was your dad, when you were out, breaking bones and stuff, was your dad kind of quietly thinking, oh, good, he can go into finance?
That's interesting. Maybe. No, my mom was furious. I came home from a game with my dad, and my finger in a splint, and it was just like apocalypse in the house. I was 12 probably.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And then my piano teacher sat me down. We had this, we took lessons in sort of a room like this, but then he had an office, and he had this big long table. You've seen Vladimir Putin at the end of those tables. Yeah. And he sat me down at one end, and he said, Reed, it's time to make a choice. You're going to keep breaking your fingers, or you're going to become a concert pianist. And I said, a concert pianist.
Okay. Oh my God, the things
Yeah.
I didn't know about you. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to a Yankees game someday.
I don't like the Yankees. Sorry.
The Mets?
Well, I respect the Yankees because, like, I have so many friends that, are Yankees fans, and it's just the history of the
Yeah.
of the game is all with the Yankees, and it's incredible. But, I come from Minnesota, and, the Twins
Oh,
have this
the
team that, they
Twins.
make the playoffs. They play the Yankees, 3 games, they're done. Not good. So it's like, if I liked the Yankees, that would be Stockholm Syndrome. So I like the Mets, but, I like the Twins, yeah.
Stockholm Syndrome, I love it.
But
Oh my
we
God.
can certainly go, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Absolutely.
We'll have a hot dog.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wonderful. Yeah.
Are you into numerology, and what is your favorite number?
Numerology, gosh.
No, so like J.S. Bach.
Yeah, no, it's not really something I think about. Yeah, I always liked the number 5 and 9 for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
And I think we talked about this before. You're not a synesthete? You don't see colors when you play?
No, not in that, not in the literal sense.
Not
like
in the
Scriabin.
Scriabin
Right,
way.
no.
But
Right.
then he thought he was God in the second coming. So
That's right.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite color?
Purple, like a deep purple.
Oh,
Yeah.
nobility.
I guess so. I don't know. It's been like that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Kind of like your
My
your
chaise
here.
lounge.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to get you on that chaise lounge for a few pictures, actually.
We could do that. It's my favorite color. So.
I love it. You're a king. Your favorite movie?
Ooh.
Do you watch movies?
I'm not a huge movie person, but gosh, my favorite movie. Maybe like Hitchcock, like Psycho is a masterpiece. That's kind of disturbing.
Are you saying that because you think you need to say that?
No. I've watched it so many times. It's so cool. Yeah.
Really? What about the other Hitchcock films like Vertigo and Rear Window?
Vertigo, yeah, great. I was harder to get into. Rear Window's cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Are you into frightening movies? Or do you like?
No,
horror?
not like gore. And actually, when I watched Psycho the first time, I won't give anything away, but there's. I knew about the shower scene, so I was scared of it, so I did that. And if you do that, you would know that there's a detail that you miss that impacts your understanding of the rest of the movie when you see a certain image on the screen that I didn't see. And then when things happened later, I was like, oh, I was supposed to be thinking that the whole time.
I love it.
But what I heard about that movie, which is now that's coming to me, is I read that like the most controversial thing was not the horror of it, but the fact that a flushing toilet was shown on screen the first time or something.
That's right. There were rules, remember?
Yeah.
I mean, they predate you, but there were definite rules. Funny. Oh my God, that movie.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I'm not the biggest movie person, but yeah.
Huh. Are you into film scores, film music?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. I mean, especially like Korn Gold.
Oh yeah.
Things like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love his
most
music
definitely.
in general. Yeah.
If you look at Errol Flynn and Korn Gold, they kind of went together. At one time. I mean, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Are you a Star Wars fan?
No, not too much, honestly. I've seen all the movies, and I always felt that they were kind of low on plot for some reason.
Oh my God.
Is that heretical?
Yeah, well, in this house, yes.
I see.
But then you'll see various Star Wars symbols in this house.
No, I mean, I was into them when watching them, and I enjoyed them, but they, for some reason, didn't stay with me that much. I don't know. I mean, I love The Empire Strikes Back. That's the best, in my opinion.
Do you know the folklore that the original Star Wars is based upon?
No, I don't.
George Lucas consulted Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist. I mean, it's really interesting.
I see. Yeah, no, I mean, when I say things like that, and I have this feeling about certain music, and it's always, it's my deficit, not theirs, because I just don't understand it enough yet, but...
Not your deficit.
Anyway.
No. I'll train you.
Probably is. Please. Yeah.
Okay, the happiest moment in your life outside of the music world?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I could say that. The happiest moment outside of the music world. Man. I don't know if there's one moment. I just try to kind of live one day at a time, but I love the experience of seeing different places and traveling and going to Paris or going to China, which was so fun, going to Tokyo, other places in Europe, but just what I love to do in New York is just take a long walk and wander and see a neighborhood or a place that I've never experienced before. So I'm very happy doing that and kind of getting lost.
I love that. Do you love nostalgia?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and I don't mind being alone and thinking about that kind of stuff. I think it's important that I don't know. I think Glenn Gould said that for every hour he spent with someone, he needed to spend like 12 hours alone. That's a little extreme, but
a little.
But there is he was very misanthropic, but there is a sense of the importance of pondering things by yourself, and
absolutely
as an artist,
absolutely, that's wonderful.
That doesn't answer what's the happiest moment. That's hard to say. If the Twins ever beat the Yankees, then we'll have one.
There you go. Is there a smell or fragrance that turns you on?
Oh, I don't know. That you're really making them interesting. Smell or fragrance? French fries.
I love it, especially if they're McDonald's.
Yeah, sure.
Can you share your most uncomfortable moment with us?
Most uncomfortable moment?
Every musician has one.
Like an embarrassing story on stage or something? Oh, well, these aren't that. They're just funny. I can share a couple of embarrassing stories from performing. So I was playing in a gala for the Queen's Symphony Orchestra. I had played a concerto with them a few weeks before. They had an end-of-season gala, and I was going up to play a couple solo pieces, and it was like a chamber music thing, and I was playing some solo pieces, and I was being introduced. I was backstage, and someone's speaking. We had Reed Tetzloff performing the Gershwin Concerto in F 3 weeks ago, and we're pleased to welcome him back tonight. And I noticed as this long, endless speech was going on that my the laces were kind of loose. So I bent down and began to untie my shoe, and it was totally untied. And I heard, "Please welcome Reed Tetzloff." So my shoe, being completely loose, I stumbled out there. And it was my right shoe where I was pedaling, and the laces were very long, so they were constantly under the shoe. And I was
my God.
pedaling, very conscious
Oh
of
my
that.
God, I love it.
And then another one was playing in Moscow in the Tchaikovsky competition. I was playing the Mozart concerto in the concerto round, and I finished the A major concerto, which was this incredible experience. Enormous hall, completely full, at the conservatory in Moscow, and every seat sold out at that stage of the competition. And so we finish. I'm shaking hands with the conductor, shaking hands with the concertmaster, taking bows, and I was not aware of this at the time because it was a big hall, and fortunately for me, people were standing, and I only was aware of this later. I watched the stream of my performance. I replayed it, and they had a camera that was sort of in the back of the hall, and the whole time I was bowing, there was this woman who had these 2 big bouquets of flowers, and she was waving them, trying to get my attention and trying to make her way to the front. I simply did not see her. And she got about halfway trying to squeeze through the crowd, and then I turned to leave the stage, and she went, "Oh." So
wonderful comic timing.
I did not see that.
You couldn't direct that. That's fantastic.
It was pretty funny.
Oh my God, you're too much.
Yeah.
Okay, are you a Monty Python fan?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah, I like the sketches for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
Oh, it's been a while since that one. It's like you ask like what kind of swallow is it or something, and then you drop to your death. Yeah. Tell me the quote.
You ask African or European?
Yeah, African or European, and then.
Do you know the answer?
No.
20.1 miles per hour.
Wow.
Get that.
That's.
I love it.
And then there's the killer bunny, right?
I know. The killer bunny is the best.
And the killer joke. That's a sketch.
Oh God! Or you laugh to death. The best.
I know that joke. You want me to tell that joke?
Yeah.
It goes like this. Wenn es das Nunstück gibt und Slaughtermeier. Ja, Bayerhund das oder die Flipperwald gesput.
Flipperwald gesput, yeah.
The Flipperwald gesput.
And then we fall over to
Yeah,
it.
we die.
And of course they're using it in World War II to try. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh
Good stuff.
God. Oh, only you would
And
know
the
that.
dead parrot sketch is a great
My
one.
favorite?
And the Spanish Inquisition, of course. Yeah.
Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. My favorite is the fish slapping dance.
I don't know that
Oh
one.
my God,
Okay.
you must go find it, you will die. Yeah, it's
Okay.
like 30 seconds long, and
Yeah.
it is so ridiculous, hilarious.
Oh, gosh. Okay, can't
it's
wait.
so ridiculous. I love it.
That's really funny.
Okay, I love it that you knew that. I love it. Okay, and another movie reference.
Okay.
What is the answer to life, the universe, and everything?
What is this? I don't know. What's this from?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, I don't know that. Okay.
But what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything?
Well, Charles Schultz had his comic strip, and Lucy comes to Schrader, and she says, "What's the meaning of life?" And he says, "Beethoven." Beethoven's the meaning of life. And what do you think it is, Lucy?
That is perfect. In fact, that's the perfect way for us to end this
So we'll
interview
go with
today.
that. Yeah.
This is a take. I love it.
Yeah.
That is so fantastic.
Oh, gosh.
It's music, and it's
Thank you.
music
Yeah.
in your hands, and we love you for that. And thank you so much, Reed Tetzloff.
Thank you so much, Pam.
I think you are my Parsifal transcendentalist.
That's a weighty title, but
No, but it's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Because
Okay.
it's filled with all these fantastic questions for you
Yeah.
to search for,
Yeah.
and to play when you're 80
Yeah.
and still be just riveting. Thank you so much, hon,
Thank
for
you
being
so much.
here, and all the best with everything. And I will
Thank
see you on September 20th in New York City.
Can't wait.
Me
Oh
either.
gosh. Thank you again.
You bet, hon.
All right.
All right.
That's it, right?
This is.
I forgot to talk about the Paris recording, by the way, but I think.
That's okay.
just
Oh,
covered
let's
it
talk
off.
about it right now. What about the
Okay.
Paris recording?
Oh, okay. Sorry. So are we going to paste this in somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just let me get out of Monty Python here.
I know.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll also be recording a program of all French music in Paris, probably sometime this fall. And I've selected a very cool program, which you'll be seeing of French composers and composers who lived in France and worked in France, and that will be filmed as well. So I'm, one more project to look forward to, and then I'll be performing it in concert. Yeah.
Different dynamic. Can you share with us any of the composers?
Yeah, sure. Chopin, Fauré, Franck, and Albert Roussel.
Oh, Roussel.
Yeah, not played very much.
Wrote many beautiful songs.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
So, we have Chopin and Franck as a Polish and a Belgian, but basically living and working in Paris. And Chopin was really French through his father, Polish through his mother. But I think all of these composers fit together nicely, and I love French music. I haven't talked about that much, but it's another side of the repertoire, especially Fauré and Debussy, that I feel so close to, and I think that it kind of represents a step away from the emotionally intense, suffering and drama of German music.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of like going to another fantastical world when you play Debussy.
That's right.
Which I love.
That's right. And Debussy, in his songs, he was a master of marrying up word and music.
Yeah.
A master.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool
stuff.
Reed, we're excited. We're excited. Well.
Okay, we got it.
Thank you. All right. This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is now down on Center Stage.